Hello, I'm Michael Lentz. I'm in charge of product management here at Devonway, and we're here to talk about strategies for reducing CAP workload. Thank everyone for attending, and we'll get right into the slides. So sometimes at CAP, it seems really hard. So here's a picture of a guy climbing a mountain, and climbing a mountain, I can tell you from experience, is a slow process. So it can take you hours to do something that would normally take you minutes. And sometimes I think in a CAP process, that's exactly how you feel. So we've spent some time trying to quantify what it means by a CAP burden. So we are spending a lot of time working on issues that are low-level issues in our CAP process. So if you think of CAP into two categories, which is high issues, which are your conditions adverse to quality, or your significant conditions adverse to quality. If you think of those as high-level issues, and then everything else is a low-level issue, you can divide it into those two sections. And if you quantify the amount of time that we're spending working on low-level issues, 93% of that is of the time that we're spending making changes or updates in the system to low-level issues is 93% of the time. So even though if you read the bulletin, it talks about the fact that NEI looks at it as 20% of issues are high level. Still, even though 20% is high level, more than that, more than 80% of the updates are happening on low level issues. So we're spending a ton of time working on stuff that is of lower significance. In addition to that, whenever an issue is filed, 14 and a half times is the number of times that someone makes an update to an issue. So, and I'm talking about just people going into the CAP software and like adding an action, changing like adding some information to it, maybe putting a comment, or changing an assignee, or changing a due date, all the things that you do in CAP software. So on average, that happens about 14 and a half times for a low-level issue. So interestingly, for a high-level issue, the number of changes on average is 15.8. So for low-level issues, we're spending basically the same amount of time as we're spending on a high-level issue, making updates in the system to either change the assignee or do whatever we need to do. So it kind of drives to the point that for low-level issues, we're maybe using the wrong tool. So we have, I think, in a lot of cases, the right tool for high-level issues that put the right amount of burden or the right amount of oversight on issues to make sure that the process is followed. But that same level of rigor in many cases, even though in a lot of cases, at least the customers I've worked with, we've spent a lot of time trying to make the system easier for low-level issues. We're still spending a lot of time making changes. And then just to really quantify that into dollars and cents, if you take the number of changes on low-level issues and assume that it's about 5 minutes per change, in a typical customer of ours, over the course of a year, that adds up to about $735,000 of time that we're spending just making changes to low-level issues. So with that, I'm going to make a poll now and give you guys some time to answer that. So let me just turn that on. So the question here is, what is your status with the efficiency bulletin? So I'm going to give you guys a couple of minutes to answer, and then we'll close the poll and show you the results. Okay, it looks like we've got a lot of votes here, so I'm going to close the poll and show everyone the results. Great. So it looks like about 52% of everyone is still thinking about it. We've got 20% that have already taken action and seeing results. So really, I mean, that's, if you add those two together, about 40%. So that's good information. So we would love to get feedback from people that have already taken steps to see how you're doing when we have follow-up calls. So I'm going to go back to my slides now. So we think that there should be better way, and I think that everyone would agree on that. So this slide is intended to be, it's supposed to be a guy going up an escalator, may not be obvious. So where or maybe our current state, it's like climbing a mountain with a really heavy backpack. We think it should be more like just standing while you get taken up an escalator. So the other thing that's important is that we're using the right tool for the right job. So when we talked earlier about the number of updates it takes to complete an issue throughout the life cycle was 14, which is basically the same amount of updates it takes to complete a high-level issue. So we think that there's a better way to do that, and we think that we can get that down to a much more manageable amount, maybe 5 or 6. So if you can go down from 14 updates to 5 or 6 updates, you've saved quite a bit of time, which will ultimately wound up making it so that you can solve your issues faster. So you can spend the time that you have working on high-level issues and not spending time working on low-level issues. So it's a lot like a Rube Goldberg machine. So if you think about this example here, there's a picture of a guy trying to do something that's really a simple task, which is use a napkin. And he's got this major contraption on his head to help him use a napkin where he could really just use his hand to get the same job done. So in the same way, when you're working on low-level issues, we should use the right the right tool to get that job done, not use a tool that is designed to get a high-level issue done. Okay, so when it comes to getting the right tool to get the job done, we think it's important that you have a clear user interface. And that goes a long way to getting people to understand what the issue is about and be able to work on these things more effectively. So I took just a really quick Google search the other day just to survey what some of the other CAP software out there looks like. And it turns out that if you just Google CAP software, you get images that look like this. And these guys are, I think, pretty representative of what not to do. So if you look at these, in general, I think that if you see around 30 fields on the screen in a lot of these cases, some maybe only have a handful, but even those ones that only have a handful, it's really not clear what the issue is about or what its status is. So for it, that you saw in the email that we send out, we have a simplified approach. So what we're is for all of your issues, like right now you can do what a lot of people call like a low-level reporting system where people enter everything in the CAP and then you screen things accordingly. So we think that that's still important, but maybe a slightly modified approach. So the idea is that people enter new items into one single point of entry, and then once it gets to screening, it's important that you can at that point route it to the right process. So like the Rube Goldberg machine before, don't route everything to a CAP program. Route the stuff that is a high-level issue to the CAP program. Stuff that's not, maybe route it to other processes like a recommendation or a general action or a process improvement or even some other process that you may have. So we'll show an example of that here in a minute when we get to a demo, but the idea is that send the item after screening to the right process. So again, going to making it simple, we here are showing a couple of simple entry screen may look like, and this is what we'll demo also. But I want to make the point that it should be simple for people to identify issues either from their desk or from a phone. So if someone is out in the field and they identify an issue, they ought to be able to capture it right there with their phone and maybe even take a picture of it and submit it and have it go down the same path to screening and ultimately to the right process based off of what someone that's intelligent decides at the end of during the end of screening. So at this point, I'm going to go now and show you guys some software, and we'll see what this might look like. Okay, so I've logged into a dashboard here, and I have a tile here called Corrective Actions. And on this tile, I can create a new event. So if I'm going to make a new event here, so I'm going to make an event, and I'm going to intentionally make this a low-level issue. So let's say that Chris Moustakis is always late for meetings and is very disruptive. And the last time he was late for a meeting was on Monday. And it was at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And I'm going to say I identified this myself. And I'm going to go ahead and put in some just placeholder text here. So we would describe the issue here, and maybe these are the immediate actions that I took. So like I said before in the slides, this is on a desktop, so it's not easy for me to show my phone through the webinar, but you could imagine doing the same thing on the phone and sending this down the path. I was trying to make the point that at this point, it's important that the screen is easy to understand for someone that's coming in here to look at this issue and try to, at this point, really try to make a disposition on it, but later on for people to work on it. So that's why we've shown here on the left-hand side a summary. So on the left, we've got the title of the issue. So we can see here very clearly that someone said that Christopher is always late for meetings and it's very disruptive. So this is the title of the event. And below here, we can find the description. So in this case, I've got some just dummy text, but typically there would be useful information in here, like maybe they would say, here's a list of all the meetings that Chris is late for, and here's the reason why it's disruptive. So all that information would be here. And if you want to expand it, so we by default are only showing here a short, maybe the first 300 characters, so that someone can see the whole history, because as this thing gets worked on, and people add comments and do work on this thing, this history will start to expand. And it's important for people to be able to see that as well. But right now, all that we have in the history is that this was created by some person on some date. But if they want to see more, they can click the See More button and see the whole list of everything that happened, or everything that someone said when they entered this issue. All right, so we've come through and we've identified an issue, and again, we could have done it on the desktop like I did here in this demo, or someone could have done the same thing on their phone and it would have wound up here in the same place. So if we look back on our process diagram here, so we've created a new item through our single point of entry, now it's in screening. At this point, we really need to decide what we want to do with it. So do we want to send it back through the CAP program if it's like a high-level issue? Or maybe we're just going to say make a recommendation, or just go have someone do an action and be done with this guy. Maybe we would even route it to another process. So how would we make that decision? So there's a lot of time spent from people. Let me just redo my slides here. Figuring out how to prioritize and how to disposition these guys, and we think that we can help you do that in a at least prioritize what you're spending time dispositioning in a more automated way. So we're working on an algorithm that will take your new items and process them and apply a rating to them. So if you remember back on that screen, in the upper left-hand corner, there was a number, and it was a number 7. And that number is intended to represent the likelihood that this is a high-level issue. So it's a number between 1 and 100, and 100 being this is very likely to be a high-level issue, or 0, this is probably something that is a low issue. So that number we assign through a number of metrics. So we take into account things like who issued it, when they issued it, how much text they used to describe the issue, whether or not it was their first issue. A lot of things that we've found that predict whether or not it's going to be a high-level issue, and some of the keywords that are in the text of the issue as well. So all those things go in and build what we call a real-time analytic that tell you what the significance score is. So that significance score is not intended to be, automatically telling you this is a high or a low-level issue. It's intended to help you prioritize. So if you're dealing with 100 of these every week, it would be helpful to be able to spend the amount of time that you have on the things that are most likely to be high-level issues. So we think the significance score will help you do that. And we even think it could even go further and give you, you could set up alerts that would tell you, hey, someone entered an issue and this sounds like or the system thinks this is going to be a high-level issue. So go ahead and send out an email to a group of people, maybe your CAP admin team, every time something above like a 70 gets issued. And that way you can respond immediately to things that are likely to be important issues. So if we go back to our example, This one was probably a low-level issue, so if someone was late to a meeting, it's a 7, so that's probably something that we don't really want to spend a lot of time in. So we would probably, going back to our diagram, want to route this to another process. So in this case, let's go ahead and route this to recommendation. So I'm not going to assign it a significance level. I'm not going to make it an event. I'm going to go ahead and say that we're going to close this thing and we're going to route it to another process, and we're going to make a recommendation. So I'm going to make a new recommendation, and I'm going to recommend that Chris take some training and read up some articles about the importance of being on time for meetings. So first I'm going to just write that down. So all right, so to do that, I'm going to go ahead and save this guy. And I'm going to assign an action to Chris. And I'm just going to put some dummy text in here for the description. So I'm going to assign this to Chris. And let's go ahead and link in some articles. So I've got an article here about the importance of being on time to meetings. So here's a link. And then I'm going to give you this Dilbert cartoon. So I'm just going to take a screenshot of this Dilbert cartoon and attach it. So I'm going to copy that to my clipboard and then go to the documents of this guy. And now that's attached. So I just pasted that in. So you can do the same thing with attachments by dragging and dropping, or just selecting the file and uploading it. So either way, it's easy to add an attachment. So now I've got this guy done. I'm just going to submit this guy, and that'll be on Chris's plate to go work on. But I should tell him when it's due. So even I forgot. So the system, it does tell you when you forgot to do stuff, so it's clear what you need to do. So I need to tell him I want this done by next week. All right, so now we've got really we've got our low-level issue handled. So we've assigned Chris to go read some stuff, and kind of made it clear to him that it's important to be on time to meetings, and now he can go do that, and I don't really need to worry about this anymore. So I'm going to just go out of here, and I'm just going to show you now, if I were Chris, when he logs into his dashboard, he should get something that will tell him what to do. So we've made it easy for people to understand that by these what we call live tiles. So on live tiles, you can automatically show people a list of what they need to do. So in my case, I've got 3 actions assigned to me, so I can see all of my work here. I've got 3 guys that I need to do, so I need to create some signs, revise the procedure, and do some other stuff. All 3 of these are here, and they're sorted by due date. So all the things that I need to do would show up on this list. If I wanted to see them on a calendar, I could go into the full list and pull up the calendar view and see, I've got one due on Friday and another one due 1 week from today, but I've also got one overdue. So this overdue item really should never happen. And we make it easier for people to find stuff that's overdue as well by showing this other tile. So this other live tile is just another filter on your actions or things to do, and it's just stuff that's due today or it's overdue. So I find this very useful. We do this internally to track our actions. So if there's ever anything I need to do that's coming due today, it automatically shows up on here, and my goal is to never have something on this list. So this tile should always be empty, but just for example purposes, I've got something on here so you can see that in this red tile, or kind of orange colored tile, that something is here. So this is an item that people need to work on right away. This can also be you can also help people know this as well by setting up a notification for these. So if you make a notification here And what you can have it do is send an email to anyone that has something overdue or coming due today that says, here's the item that you need to do. And it will send out an email to everybody individually with the items that are assigned to them. So it's easy to set that up. Okay, so I'm going to head back to the slides now and show you guys a couple more things. So we talked about the significance score. We talked about how it shows up. So this is another example. So a low-level issue gets a low score. Another thing to help people stay up to date is emails. So when an action is completed, for example, we send out an email that says, hey, this was done. Here's what happened. So people can understand easily what happened to the things that they care about. So these types of notifications are important. They could be set up for different things, like when a condition report is filed at a high level, something like this could come out and say, here's the issue and here's the contents of it. So I think that emails like this are important for people to be able to understand without having to really take any additional effort from what they're already doing, which is checking their email. And then finally, I want to make the point that we've shown you an integrated system where someone could have you could have your CAP process in a system like ours and then route things to other processes within a system like ours. But you could also have it where you already have a CAP system in place that you're really not in a position to get rid of. You can front end that with a system like I've shown you and have it whenever you're done with screening and you decide it's a high-level issue and you want to send it to your existing CAP system, you can have it send it over there through a web service. So you don't have to replace that just to take advantage of the things I've shown you. You can have a system like we've shown and then have it send like an XML message or a REST message over to your existing system, say it's SAP or Maximo, and still process your high-level issues and with all of the rigor that you're used to using. So that's an example here. So I've highlighted this area here at the bottom. So this is the typical rest of the CAP process that we see. This doesn't have to be within a system like this. It could be within your own system. And again, here on this slide, you can see, you could have here, you got through screening, and then we could send off a web service message to your CAP program. And we could even have this web service message going to some other process, say your engineering change management or something else. So you can have your single point of entry and send it to the right place, even if it's not within one system. So that really concludes the content. So at this point, we'll take some questions. So if you've got some questions, we'll answer those. So one of the questions I see here is the risk scale configurable, like 1 to 4 versus 1 to 100. It is. So we have it set as an example of 1 to 100, but it really is like a probability. So if you want to weight that probability and make it 1, 2, 3, 4 in distinct values, we could do that as well. Let's see. Another question is, what are the outcomes and can we get reports? You absolutely can. So I didn't spend any time in this webinar talking about all of the robust reporting that comes with a system like I've shown you, but there is a really cool ad hoc reporting tool and ability to slice and dice data in many ways that we could show you in a follow-up demo. So I think we are out of time now. If there are any other questions, feel free to contact us. Here's our phone number. You can send an email to info@devonway. I know generally that sounds like an email that no one checks, but I assure you that someone checks that and that we will get back to you if you send an email there. We appreciate your time and have a great rest of your day.